Welcome to day two of Uncopyable Content. I'm so excited you're back here with me today because we're going to be talking all things storytelling. And it's not just any storytelling, we're talking about how to take everyday moments and turn them into magnetic content that connects with your audience and is going to eventually convert into clients. So let's start with this. Storytelling is the actual bridge between you and your dream clients. It's not the information that you're sharing that gets remembered, but it's the stories you tell and the way that you make people feel. I know that a lot of people tend to think like, but my life is boring, or I don't know which stories to tell. I don't have anything interesting to share. But the truth of the matter is, the most magnetic stories aren't about these huge, dramatic, and life altering events. They're about the little everyday, ordinary experiences that actually carry such insight and wisdom. But your job is to notice them and to frame them in a way that connects. So, why does storytelling matter so much? Storytelling isn't just about sharing personal anecdotes, but it's about creating those emotional connections. And when you share your genuine experiences, you show that real side of you, the relatable person behind the brand. And it's going to build trust, deepen engagement, and make your brand truly magnetic. Stories, like I said, build the bridges. They invite your audience from their perspective to see themselves in your experiences, and that allows them to step inside your world, sparking both connection and inspiration. It's what actually gets them to move. It's what activates them. It's that feeling that they have when they see themselves emulated inside of your content. So I'm going to give you guys a story that I recently shared on my page. And this was honestly just an in the moment um, r- random occurrence where my daughter and I were in our house and we saw our cat noticing something on the fireplace and we weren't sure what it was. And when we took a closer look, we found that there was a young ladybug crawling around. My daughter is an huge animal lover, creature supporter, like all things living, she loves. And she immediately put her hand down to let the ladybug crawl into her palm. And I knew exactly what she wanted to do. She wanted to get it to safety. So my instinct was to open the front door and take it outside and put it in the plants. But she had a completely different idea. When we took it outside, I told her, I said, let's find a safe place to put it so that, it can have shelter and hide in the plants. And she said, no. She said, he knows what to do. He knows how to fly. She insisted on letting that little ladybug open its new formed wings and fly instead of placing it in a safe spot. And it was in that exact moment I my eyes were opened and I saw how this tiny little interaction mirrored a massive business truth. And it's just sometimes that trusting in the process, or in our case, sometimes our own natural ability to do something, can lead to unexpected growth. So, right there in that moment, as it was literally unfolding in front of my eyes, I knew that this was something that I wanted to speak to and create a piece of content from. And this is what is gonna happen once you guys start really learning how to open your eyes and be aware of these everyday instances. You're gonna start seeing content everywhere, and this is exactly what I'm gonna show you how to do today. This little story resonated so much because it was simple, true, and completely anchored in emotion. It was this experience with my daughter that was my own personal experience and story to tell, but my audience could also envision themselves in this exact moment in some shape or form. So let's break down this example of the ladybug. So the everyday moment was finding the ladybug inside of our house. The observation was my daughter's confidence, complete confidence in that ladybug's ability to fly. And the business insight was that too many entrepreneurs wait for permission or external validation before they make their moves. And the outcome of the story is when you trust your natural ability or your wings, you can allow your brand to take off and soar. And the ending of the story is that little ladybug did open up its wings and it flew away. So it did exactly what my daughter had complete confidence that it could do. So you want to use the 5 W's to frame every story that you're going to tell. And I want you to ask yourself these questions whenever you notice an everyday moment. So the first thing is who? Who was involved in this moment? Was it you, just yourself, you and your family? Was it a client, a customer? And then next, what? What exactly happened? You're going to describe the event or experience in detail. When? Time frame matters. So when did this happen? The time of day, the season, or a significant moment? When you put in the element of time, it makes your content extremely more specific, especially to you and your scenario. And this is also how you create content that is uncopyable. The more specific you are in the details, the who, the what, the when, the more unique to you it becomes and uncopyable that it is. So the where did this happen? Were you at home, on the go, in line at pickup for school? Were you at work in a challenging situation? And lastly, why? Why is this moment significant? Why is it creating this spark, this light bulb moment that you feel compelled to share with others? It must be teaching a lesson or an insight, and this lesson or insight can always be tied back into your business. So when we're crafting our stories, there is a certain structure and flow to it. We want to get all of our ideas organized and put together so that they create a normal succession that flows naturally and makes sense to the reader. So my suggestion is as you're experiencing these moments, write them down. If you can't write them down, get out your phone, do a voice memo, something just to document the details. Because I guarantee you, even if you say, like, oh, when I get home in a half an hour, I'll do it, I'll write it down, I'll remember, you'll get home and you'll have something else to do or get distracted. And then when you go back to actually do it that evening or the next day, the details become foggy and you start to lose that clarity of why this story stood out to you in the first place and why you felt so compelled to share it. So take note of these stories, and it's going to help you in order to structure them later on. So, the first thing that you want to do, as you know, is you want to have a hook in that first 3 to 5 seconds that would start with some sort of bold statement or intriguing question to pique the interest of your audience. So, for example, when referring to the ladybug, we could say something like, have you ever seen a tiny moment that changed absolutely everything? This is going to lead into the narrative or the heart of the story. So now we're going to take that little moment and everyday moment and describe it in very vivid detail. So you want to share your emotions and personal thoughts while experiencing that moment. So, for example, today my daughter found a young ladybug inside our house. Instead of placing it safely in the plants, like I suggested, she said, he needs to try and fly on his own. And in that moment, I saw the pure, unfiltered trust in his ability to fly, something I wish more entrepreneurs had for themselves. Then we come to the lesson. This is how it connects back to your business and makes sense for your reader. This is how they see themselves inside your shoes. So you want to explain what the takeaway is. You're going to translate this moment into how it relates to, for instance, this example for me, I'm going to relate it back to business growth and personal authenticity. But that's not what everything has to relate back to. This is just specific to this ladybug example, but you want to take the moment and translate it back how it relates to business. So, for example, I'm going to say, just like that ladybug, too many of us hesitate to take that leap inside our business. We second guess our unique talents, waiting for permission that never comes. But when you trust your innate ability, you unlock, or rather step into, the success that's been within inside you all along. And the last step is, of course, you want to have a strong call to action because you're going to create these inspiring next steps to move your audience forward. So you want to invite your audience to have a moment to reflect and act on this. So I could say, today, I challenge you to trust in your unique genius. DM me ready if you're ready to start building a brand that is truly uncopyable. So, let's go through how you exactly formulate the perfect storytelling caption. Now we have the framework and the basics, but now let's dive into it into further detail and why it's the most important content skill you'll ever master. So, your caption is not just the place for you to list bullet points or vague advice or just give a copy and paste version of someone else's story. It's the place where your dream client is actually deciding, she gets me, she sees me, and I trust her. Storytelling in your caption does three powerful things. One, it creates emotional connection. Two, it reveals your voice and your values. And three, it moves your audience towards action without sounding salesy. This is just a natural progression of you telling a story that they can relate to, identify themselves in, see the transformation, and want to take action so that they can have the same sort of results for themselves. So we have a 5-part storytelling caption framework that I want to go through with you guys because this is really important when you sit down to write your caption and you want it to flow seamlessly and tell the story from the beginning to the end and everywhere in between. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to have a hook to grab their attention. So we're going to open with something bold, emotional, or curiosity driven. So we can ask a bold question. We can start like mid moment. Maybe you want to start mid moment of the story to really build that like suspense and intrigue. And we can also lead with a feeling, very strong feeling of emotion or belief, something that we strongly believe in. So here's a few examples for you guys. This is the moment I almost walked away from my business. Okay, so this is very dramatic and it leaves the reader wanting to know, well, what happened? Why was she going to walk away? Another example is, I used to think I had to sound like her to be successful. Okay, this is something that resonates with me and my brand. This leaves the audience wanting to know, well, I often think that I need to sound like her to be successful. So, what is it that I actually need to do in order to see success? And the last one is, you don't need a niche, you need a voice. So, what does that mean to someone? And this is very bold, right? This is a bold statement. You're calling them out and you're telling them, don't obsess over your niche. You need to be owning your voice. And then you're going to show them exactly what that means. So the second part is, you want to set the scene or paint the moment. These are like mini movies in our mind, right? We want to be so vivid with the details that we are literally, it feels like we're transporting our audience into that exact moment in time. So you want to ground the reader in real life experience and use sensory detail and open honesty. Where were you? What exactly was happening? How were you feeling inside that moment? So, an example is, I was sitting in my car staring at the post I just wrote, completely afraid to hit publish. People can see themselves in this moment because we've all been there and we've all done that. It's relatable. It transports them in time to that moment when they've done the same and felt the same way. And yes, they are probably not sitting in their car, or maybe they were, but it's just this vivid picture that you're painting where they can recall a moment in time where they felt exactly the same way. Next, you're going to share the shift, the belief shift, or the moment, the teaching, the lesson from this experience. So, what changed for you because of this experience? What did this moment teach you? You want to keep it emotionally honest and clear. We don't want to get vague or too wordy with this because then you are going to lose your audience. You want to keep them focused and connected. So, for example, you can say, "That's what I realized. I was still writing content for approval, not for connection." So, this is the aha moment that they had, realizing that I've been doing this kind of wrong all along. And so now they want to know, what is the solution? How do I fix this? So, this is where we make it relatable, and we're now taking our personal story and experience and we're bridging it back to our audience so that we are making this all about them. Because remember, your audience comes whether it's to your page, to your content, to your offers, because they want to know how does it benefit them? What is in it for them? What is going to be the transformation that they can expect from stepping inside your world? So we need to connect your story to something that your dream client is actively struggling with. Show them that you get it, that you've been there, that you've walked the walk. You're not just talking the talk. And not only that, but you've come out on the other side and you know how to break through. And this is the way to do it. So, for example, going back to the example we've talked about in the previous slides, in this relatable moment, you would say, if you've ever shrunk your truth to fit a formula, I want you to know there's a better way. So now you are positioning yourself as the solution. Lastly, we're going to call them forward with a CTA. Now that we've got them emotionally connected and invested in our story and the transformation, you need to lead them somewhere. We're not just telling the story just for the sake of it, just because it makes for a good moment in time to tell. You want to lead them somewhere, you want to activate them, you need them to take action. So you want to make your next step very clear and compelling and telling them exactly what they need to do. Your audience is not going to guess about what you want them to do. You need to tell them and be very specific. So we could have two versions of an example for a strong call to action. I could say, if you're ready to start writing content that reflects who you really are, DM me Uncopyable and let's talk. Or want to help creating content that's rooted in your voice? My mini mind is open now. The link is in the bio. Or reply Uncopyable for more information. You want to tell them, first of all, exactly what to do and what you're pointing them to. Like, are you pointing them to your offer? Are you pointing them to a clarity call? Are you pointing them to a free guide that you're going to give? Whatever it is that you are telling them to do, that action has to solve their problem in some shape or form. It's not going to like solve everything for them, but it's going to be a tiny win for them, an actionable step that they can take and see results from. And why this formula works so well is because people truly don't remember facts. I mean, this is why we are obsessed with watching, TV shows and just scrolling on our phones. Like, we aren't looking to consume data. We are looking to connect with people, to feel something, to have that sense of belonging. So people are going to remember how you made them feel. They don't want another bullet pointed list. They need to see themselves inside of your words and in your stories. And this formula that we just went through is how your content becomes the exact moment that someone finally says yes to your offer. Like I said before, we all want to have a purpose with our content. Our content is not just for the sake of posting. We are here to create content that converts. So, here are some good tips for effective storytelling in business that I always make sure to include when I am creating my content. The first thing is you have to be open to being vulnerable, and this can be difficult. But authenticity definitely resonates. So don't be afraid to share your wins and your failures because they both of them pave the way for growth. So many times you see everyone's, highlight reels and they're only sharing the wins because they think that they have to do this in order to establish authority. But people see you the most in the moments when you're vulnerable. I know that my first client ever came to me based off a story sequence that I did during a day where I was feeling a lot of resistance inside of my business. I didn't know what to do. I knew that I felt stuck. It felt sticky. It felt hard to get through the day. And so I decided to do the thing that I would probably least want to do in that moment. And that was prop up my phone, videotape myself, and just talk about how I felt in that moment of resistance. I was being open and honest and vulnerable and saying, "Hey, look, this is real life. This is what being an entrepreneur is. It's not all about the highs. Like there are the lows." But I knew in that moment that that resistance was there for a reason. And it was just there to actually remind me that I was on the right path. So I wanted to speak to that moment and I felt empowered to do so. So by creating that vulnerable moment and posting it to my stories today was actually when my client reached out to me and said, "I have no idea how I found you or your page, but your stories popped up and this is exactly what I needed to hear today. I am feeling the same way." And she and I formed this wonderful conversation and connection, and she ended up being a long-term client of mine. So, this is truly the power of being vulnerable and owning all of the moments, telling all of the stories, because it's not, people don't connect with only seeing success because that's not realistic. There's no business in life that has success 100%. You have to have the ebbs to have the flows and the highs and the lows. So make sure to share all of it. Next is you want to keep it conversational. Write like you're speaking. Just as I'm sitting here speaking to you now, I'm talking to you in a tone and a voice and a manner that I would be speaking to my children or my friends or my husband or even a stranger that I approach on the street. Your unique voice is your superpower because no one else can literally replicate it. So you want to talk naturally. You don't have to use words that don't feel comfortable or jargon that doesn't vibe. Think about how you would talk to your best client in a voice note and emulate that. One of my favorite things to do is to use visuals. So, when you're storytelling, visuals can amplify and magnify a story so very much. So it's important if you have the opportunity to pair your story with images or B roll that illustrate or capture that moment. I am always taking pictures and videoing everything. You can ask my kids. Like I was doing this prior to having this business. My phone, its memory is basically maxed out with videos and pictures, and I think that's common for a lot of us. So we're not going to always be documenting our life day in and day out, but if you have the chance and you're living in a moment that is sparking inspiration, take the moment to take your phone out and take even just a snapshot. Or if you can secretly videotape, like, your kids doing something, creating a wonderful piece of art. And, like my kids, they have like a radar now and they know when I'm filming them and they're like, "Hey," and they turn around. um, but if they don't mind or they don't know that you're videoing them and you just want to capture that moment, then it could be something that could be really powerful later when you're using that to connect to a story and create that storytelling piece. And of course, you don't have to do that as well. You can still have a powerful storytelling sequence by using B-roll or images just of yourself. Because if you're always tying the story back to you, then as long as you are a part of your content, then it's going to land and resonate. So, and like with anything in life, practice makes perfect. So, the more you're telling your story, the more natural it becomes and it feels. You can even use a daily journal, like I said, or voice notes on your phone to keep notes and track of these day to day moments. And this is going to really help you to refine your storytelling style. Um, you're going to also want to tell the same stories over and over again. I know this may sound odd, but the fact of the matter is, we think that everybody, or at least our audience, sees all of our content, everything we put out, everything we create. When the matter of the fact is, they only see a small percent of what we actually create and put out there. So, telling the same stories over and over again, when done in the right way, is extremely powerful because the likelihood that someone is actually going to see that story is much higher, especially from your audience. And oftentimes, just as human beings, we need that gentle reminder. And it's great to see those stories pop up again, especially when they evoke those emotions and create that connection, because people will begin to say, oh my gosh, yes, I remember this story. This is the one where she talks about this, and that's when she started her business. It's going to be those stories that are going to evolve and become your core brand stories. And one day, when you're speaking on a large stage in front of thousands of people, they're going to be like, yes, I remember this. This is Jamie's chameleon story. It's going to be something that they can tie back so specifically to you, and they know you because of this. We all have these stories inside of us. This is not unique to me. I'm just using that as an example. And I'm going to show you guys how to find and identify these stories so that you can start using them every day inside your content. So, how do we actually recognize everyday moments as these little content gold mines? So, we're going to turn these mundane moments into emotionally resonant and belief shifting content that not only connects with your audience, but is going to convert. So every day, day in and day out, are full of experiences that when you share them authentically, they can truly inspire and educate your audience. So you want to be on the lookout for moments that reveal a lesson, a pivot, or a unique insight about yourself. And when you actually weave your everyday life into your business, you're not just creating content for the sake of creating content. You are actively building a brand that's authentic, dynamic, and uncopyable as you are. And the result is content that is going to feel effortless, aligned, and fully you, because you are just speaking from your experiences. And I want to share a moment with you guys that actually happened yesterday. My daughter and I went to go get boba after school, and we were walking back to the car. And I had on, of course, my yellow hat. And there was this gentleman and his wife who got out of their car. And just out of nowhere, he said, "Hey, I love that hat. That is a fantastic color." And I stopped and I turned and, completely unexpected and unprompted. I don't know this gentleman at all. And I was like, well, thank you. And we started and sparked up just a natural conversation. And in that moment, this gentleman was telling me like how he has hats. He has hundreds of hats. He's a huge hat collector, never goes without wearing one. And I was saying that I am the same. And he wanted to know where I bought mine. And it just formed this natural conversation off a simple compliment. And when we got inside the car, the first thing my daughter said, because she's so used to how I, am always keeping my eyes open for little moments like these, she said, "Mommy, you need to create a reel about that." And I was like, you just read my mind, because that's exactly what I was thinking. And so I took out my phone and I voice noted what happened in that moment and saved it for later. And the thing I was telling my daughter, I was teaching her in that moment, is that I said, mommy wears her hats and dresses the way she does, not because I'm trying to please anyone. This is just me. This is who I am. I said, and that man who doesn't know me saw me in that moment for who I was. And that is so extremely powerful. And that translates to building my brand online and being uniquely me. And I told her, I said, this is such a great teaching moment for me to pass on to you guys because it was a completely random moment in time that just further validated my individuality and who I am as a person and as a brand. And it felt really good in that moment. And that's something, that emotion, that feeling is something I want to carry on and pass to my audience so they can feel empowered and inspired to be uniquely them themselves. I haven't created that piece of content yet, but it's going to be coming soon. So, there is a method to this madness. It's called the magnetic method. So, it breaks down like this. The first part is M, which stands for your mindset shift. So, this is where you need to stop waiting for these big, huge, massive moments to happen. Your stories are in the absolutely ordinary, like I just shared with you about the man complimenting me yesterday after school. The A stands for awareness. So, you're going to be curious and aware, and you're going to ask yourself, maybe reflect later that day. What made me feel something today? What was different? What stood out to me? G is for gathering the details. You're going to go back and use the 5 W's that we talked about to sketch out the scene: the who, what, where, when, and why. The N stands for naming the lesson. So, what is the deeper meaning behind this moment? What is the lesson to be taught? E is for extracting the business connection. This is where it ties back to your audience's journey and is so extremely important in making now this story focused on them. T is telling the story itself. So you have that hook, the emotion that's connected with it, the insight you're providing, and then the invitation to take action. So, which leads to I, invite reflection. So, you want to give your audience a reason to see themselves inside your story. And C, you're going to create that engagement. You're leading them forward with a strong call to action and telling them exactly what the next step is to take. So, let's talk about the mindset shift. This is where we're reframing how you view content creation forever. Okay. We're not going to no longer sit down and sit there racking our brains trying to think of something that we could come up with that is just going to magically speak to our dream clients. No, we are going to take from your everyday life and create content because you're going to now start seeing it through a lens of connection. So you want to ask yourself, what if this ordinary moment could inspire someone's breakthrough? What if this moment is content? What if this story is the exact thing someone else needs to hear today? Just like I told you when I propped up my phone and started talking about resistance. In that moment, that was something that my client needed to hear in that moment on that day. So here's an example. I used to think my content had to be perfectly curated, but some of my most powerful posts came from the messy, real life moments, like the time I cried in my car after a failed launch. That story got more saves and replies than anything else I had ever planned. Why? Because it was real, and real always resonates. So we need to be aware of these moments as they're happening around us. We want to catch that little micro moment in the moment that it's happening. So you're going to tune more into your emotional world inside. And you want to really pause and notice what's happening around you in your life. And this is a great thing for all of us to practice because as we are building these businesses online and we get consumed with having to be on our phone, it's such a breath of fresh air to actually give yourself that permission to experience life and know that your life is now upcycling your business. And then in turn, the exact benefit of that is that your business is going to be upcycling your life because of it. So ask yourself, like, what am I feeling like emotionally alive about right now? What am I feeling or realizing in this moment? So here's an example for you. My daughter left a note inside my journal that said, "You're doing amazing, mommy." I was mid launch and I was exhausted, and I needed that more than I knew. Sometimes the most magnetic moments in your brand aren't about sales, they're about the belief behind what you're building. And situational elements to pull your audience in. Where were you? What happened? What did it feel like in your body? What was at stake? Use vivid sensory language to describe where you were at, how you felt, what was happening around you. Transport yourself back to that moment in time. So, for example, you can say, and this is actually an instance that happened for me personally the other evening. I was standing in the kitchen barefoot chopping onions while Hamilton played in the background. My husband made a sarcastic comment, and that's when I realized his words were still rooted in our old reality. My business has changed everything, and in the moment, I felt that. So, next, you're going to name what the shift or lesson was from this moment. What did it make you realize? What was this aha moment of clarity? What shifted? What did it teach you that you can now pass on to your audience? What new truth did you uncover? This is where you are taking the belief or the identity and you're completely reframing it and shifting that belief for your audience and seeing it from your perspective. So, that moment reminded me it's not about income, it's about overflow, about being able to say yes to things we. This is where you have now taught the lesson, but now are extracting it and pulling it back, tying this moment to the message your audience needs to hear about the struggle that they are currently facing. So you're going to bring this back to what you help people do, the transformation that you provide. We're going to make this bridge between your story and your offer. Remember, I said stories are the connecting bridge between your audience and you. And this is how this happens. You're going to ask yourself, how does this connect to the transformation that I specifically provide to my audience? So for me, I would say this is exactly why I teach women to build brands around their story. Because when you try to copy what works for someone else, you disconnect from what your audience actually needs, and that is you. And T, we're going to tell this story. We're going to shape it in the clearest of a narrative, the before, the turning point, and the after. From start to finish, you're going to have all of the messy middle included. We're not leaving any of it out because we want to be real and raw. Okay. This is the emotional heartbeat of your brand and who you are at the core. You want to keep it conversational and emotionally grounded. This is where resonance happens. This is where the story becomes magnetic. This is where it draws your audience in, wanting them to know more. Or you don't want this monotone story sequence that doesn't showcase your voice, that doesn't showcase your personality, that doesn't showcase your expertise. You want to keep it conversational and engaging. So let's give a few examples. So this you could say, before I used to batch 30 pieces of content a week and still hear crickets. The shift is then I shared a raw, unfiltered story about my very first sale, and the DM started flowing in. And the after, now my content is built completely around me and it converts because it connects. So the I is where we're inviting reflection. We're giving our audience a reason to see themselves inside our story. You want to create this moment that they say, I felt that too. I know exactly how that feels. So you're going to ask a bold question here, or share a belief shift, or prompt them to look inward. You want to say, how can I turn this into a mirror moment for my reader, where the story you're telling is literally mirroring their life, and they can not only connect to that, but relate to it on the deepest of levels. This is where your content stops becoming about you. It's no longer about you at this point. It becomes 100% about them. This is where your audience sees themselves inside your post, and it's the, oh my God, she is in my head moment. How does she know exactly what I'm thinking? So, for example, I could say, following templates and relying on plug and play strategies is encouraging you to create content that you think people want to hear instead of actually what you want to say. And lastly, we have that call to action. This is the whole reason why we are creating this content. We want this content to not only connect, but to convert. So we have to lead them forward. It can be soft or bold, depending on your tone. There's no right or wrong, but it always needs to be crystal clear. What aligned next step can they take? You need to tell them exactly what they should do. This is how you create content connection and get your audience to step inside your world. Invite them to DM you, save this post, join your offer, or shift their perspective. But whatever you're doing, you are activating them to move. You want them to step inside your world, because once they get a taste of you and what you have to offer and how you teach and what you provide, the transformation, they are going to want to stay. Okay, this is the ultimate goal. So, an example for a post ending could be, if this hits home and you're ready to start building content around your voice, your story, and your truth, DM me Uncopyable and let's talk about getting you inside my mini mind. So, a lot of you may say, but my life is boring. I don't have anything interesting to share. Jamie, how am I going to find these moments? Like, how? Well, I'm going to show you exactly how to turn those mundane moments into magnetic storytelling. And I know that a lot of us think this, and I promise you that your everyday life is so exciting and full of so many story worthy moments. You just have to be able to open your eyes to see them. And the key is learning to see them from a different perspective. So, as I told you before, you're not going to be waiting around for these big, huge moments to happen. Okay. It's not going to be something monumental. It's going to be the little tiny day to day things that are actually going to reveal something that is so powerful. So, think about it. A spilled cup of coffee can teach a lesson on business setbacks, or forgetting your keys can mirror the way us entrepreneurs overcomplicate success, or watching your pet settle into their favorite spot could represent the power of complete alignment in business. The magic isn't in the event necessarily, it's in the insight that you pull from it and then can share with your audience. So let's give some real life examples. So this one is about standing in line at the grocery store. So the mundane moment is you're waiting in line, as we all have at the grocery store, scrolling on your phone to kill time and notice the person in front of you chatting with the cashier while you're just there with all the time in the world, which we don't have, right? So the lesson in this is that presence matters. The business connection is that so many entrepreneurs create content from a place of just getting it done. Like, I just want to get through this grocery line so I can move on to the next thing before I go pick my kids up from school, instead of being fully present. And this translates into we just want to get content done just to check it off of our task list, instead of actually being fully present in your brand and creating something that is memorable. The brands that thrive are the ones that engage instead of just existing. And this is the moment, the teaching lesson that is coming from this grocery store line. For a hook, you could create something that says, are you treating your content like a task to check off or like a conversation that builds trust? This allows your audience to reflect and see themselves in this moment and decide which of the two that they are. And then it leads to your solution of how to fix this. Let's talk about the coffee spill. So the mundane moment in that is that you're rushing to take a sip of coffee while juggling your laptop, your keys, trying to get in the car, and it spills everywhere. Super frustrating. My kids would say mommy would drop the car word. uh, it's the S word, and I only say it when I have moments like this. The lesson here is slowing down, right? To prevent bigger messes and delays. The business connection is you can say how entrepreneurs who rush creation jump into new strategies without clarity, or they're pushing out offers before they're ready. They often end up overwhelmed and completely burnt out. So, an example of a story hook would be I used to think moving fast meant I'd get results until I realized I was just spilling energy everywhere. Let's talk about the lost keys. That's your mundane moment. You're running late, can't find your keys, searching everywhere, high, low, around, tearing the whole house apart, only to realize that you've overlooked them and they were in your bag the entire time. So, the lesson here is that the answers you're looking for are usually already with you. And the business connection is many entrepreneurs spend months searching for the perfect strategy, course, or guide, when in reality, they already have everything they need to start showing up powerfully. A story hook you could use for this moment would be, what if you already had everything you need to grow your brand, but you've been searching in the wrong place? Your stories are not distractions from your strategy. They are your strategy. And when used right, they are the most powerful things that you can use inside your business. The more your content reflects your humanity, your values, your perspective, your real, imperfect, powerful truth, the more magnetic your brand becomes. You're no longer creating content to be seen, but you're telling stories with a purpose. You're making your audience feel something, and that is exactly what makes people move. So I am going to show you guys some examples from my page so that you can see how I have taken moments from my day-to-day, pulled them from everywhere, and used them to create content that connects and converts. You've learned today how everyday life holds these exact stories that your audience needs to hear, and you know how now to turn these moments into extraordinary messaging. You've lived your experiences, and you're going to create content now that connects and converts. We want to make sure always that we're passing the only you test so your message becomes instantly recognizable as you and no one else. And we're going to write in a way that makes your audience feel and not just read your words. You're going to be crafting content that no one else can copy because it is built from who you are. So let me share with you guys a few examples before we end today. Okay, I'm going to share with you guys my Hamilton one. This is my most recent storytelling piece that I did. So it says, listening to Hamilton soundtrack while cooking stir fry last night gave me the greatest idea. I couldn't wait to share it with my husband, but his response was the farthest thing that I wanted to hear. So this was an actual moment in time when we were listening to the Hamilton soundtrack as we were cooking dinner. And my kids absolutely adore the music and we're watching the movie. And in that moment, I had this light bulb moment of I knew that this play was coming to town and I wanted to get tickets and surprise our kids. Um, and I told my husband that. I was like, hey, why don't you look up these tickets? Let's see if we can go. And his response, even though I know my husband really well and I should have known what he was going to say, it still caught me off guard because it's not what I wanted to hear. And in that moment, I literally told him, like, you just became content, a piece of my content. And he was like, okay. But it's because in that moment, I saw a very powerful lesson that brought me back into my business and I knew that other people could connect with. So I'm going to read you my caption so you can see how I formatted it to story tell and then lead to my offer. So you always want to have a hook at the very beginning that is still kind of vague, but is intriguing people to get them down inside your caption in order to actually hear the story. If you're spending all of this time creating this beautifully crafted and captivating story, you want them to actually take the time to read it. So I said, I still can't get it out of my mind. The other night, while we were making dinner, my husband turned on the Hamilton soundtrack, something we do often because our daughter is completely obsessed with the music. We sang and chopped veggies to the rhythm of My Shot when I suddenly had a brilliant idea. We should take the kids to see Hamilton live. So I turned to my husband and asked, have you looked up ticket prices for when it comes to town? And without skipping a beat, he gave me his usual sarcastic knee jerk response. No, what's the point? I paused, definitely a little annoyed, but I knew exactly where that reaction came from. You see, this response wasn't really about tickets. It was the voice of our past. Over a decade of having to say no to things like this because we were living on his irregular income that wasn't guaranteed from one month to the next. We've made a lot of hard choices, and for a long time, the fun extras were never even on the table. But things are different now. My business is growing, his business is expanding. Just this year alone, we've gone to 6 local performances as a family. Not because we have to say yes to every little thing, but because now we get to consider the things that used to feel out of reach. His response reminded me exactly why I'm building this brand, why I choose to show up, why I create content that's rooted in my story, my voice, and my truth. Because this business, it isn't separate from my life. It's the thing that allows me to upcycle my life. And the more I live, the more I share, the more powerful my brand becomes. I told him, congratulations, you're now the inspiration for my next piece of content. To which he replied, I'm so glad I could be helpful. But it's true. This is what building a magnetic, uncopyable brand looks like. You get inspired from your real life, your conversations, your experiences, and you use it to connect and inspire and convert. And that's exactly what I'm helping you do inside my 3-day mini mind, Uncopyable Content. You don't need to post more or try harder. You need to start creating content that is uniquely you. Comment Uncopyable to claim your spot. So you see how I transported my audience to this exact moment of time. I'm showing them what happened, how I felt, the light bulb moment I had from this, and how I'm translating this into a lesson and a solution for my audience. Okay. So I'm going to also give you guys another example. It's one that I had. It's also one of my core brand stories. And it's about the moment when I decided to go all in on me and leave my ultrasound job completely and entirely, burn my certifications to the ground. And here it is. I realized when the clock struck midnight on New Year's that I had intentionally let my credentials as an ultrasound technician expire and die after 16 years. And there was absolutely no going back on this decision. My life has never been the same since. Okay, so in my hook, I am being very specific. There is a when, and not only is there a when, I'm not only saying it was New Year's Eve, I'm saying literally as the clock struck midnight, because this is actually when I made that decision and I committed 100% to it, and there was no looking back. What was happening? I decided to let my ultrasound credentials expire and die. And after 16 years of having done this profession, that's telling people there's a connection point there of the medical field or an ultrasound technician or whatever it may be. I've actually had people reach out and say, wow, I was a sonographer too, or I am a sonographer, and I want to be able to do the same. I want to quit my job as well. And then I'm saying like how this decision made me feel and how it affected me. Like I decided this was it. There's no going back. And now because of that one choice, my life is completely changed because of it. So I'm going to go through this caption with you guys as well, because I think it is beneficial to see these examples and for me to explain them in person so that it helps you be able to more easily write your storytelling captions. So again, I have a hook right here that I say, I still can't believe it. So your audience is like, okay, like what happened? Like why, how'd this change her life? Did she make the right decision? Did she make the wrong one? So I say, as the clock struck midnight on New Year's Eve, I officially made one of the boldest decisions of my life. I let my ultrasound license expire after 16 years of being certified and 6 years of college. This wasn't just a piece of paper, it was my safety net, the thing I could fall back on when life felt uncertain, the crutch that I kept holding on to, just in case my entrepreneurial dreams didn't work out. But I realized when you keep a backup plan, you're telling yourself that failure is an option. So I decided I wasn't going to entertain that idea anymore. When my husband reminded me a few days earlier to renew my license before the deadline, his initial reaction to my decision was complete and utter shock. I told him confidently, I won't be renewing my license for next year. Most people would call me crazy. Why would you throw away nearly 2 decades of work and an expensive education? But to me, letting go of my credentials meant letting go of the old version of myself, the one who planned her life around the what ifs. It meant stepping fully into my power, into the life and business I knew that I was meant to create. I didn't just decide to let my license expire. I decided to go all in. No backup plans, no safety nets, just me. My dreams and a clear vision of a future where I thrive doing what I love. And guess what? One day later, I signed a dream client. Proof that I was exactly where I was meant to be. My leap of faith rewarded almost instantaneously. This new year is unlike any other for me. I left behind a career that no longer served me and stepped fully into a life that lights me up. If you've ever felt stuck between who you were and who you know you're meant to be, I want to remind you. You have permission to let go of what no longer serves you. You have permission to burn the safety net and take that leap. Because when you go all in, incredible things happen. This is the year of trusting yourself, taking bold action, and building a business and life you're wildly passionate about. Ready to take your own leap of faith? Comment 2025 and I'll show you exactly how to create a personal brand that stands out and sells because it's built around you. So in this moment, this I'm pointing to my one-on-one coaching, and I'm showing people, a lot of people can connect to this moment, right? Because they see themselves maybe in a job or a career that they are doing just to provide income. But they're so passionate and have so much experience and knowledge and expertise and talents and other things, but those things don't pay the bills, right? But what if they could? And this is the belief shift I'm showing people. What if everything you've always known to be safe and true, you can actually challenge that and have the life that you've always dreamed of? And I tell them that I've done this through taking a leap of faith on myself and building this business and basing it off of my unique genius. And you can do the same. But it takes owning that moment, owning that confidence and trust in yourself to build a business and a brand that truly stands out and is successful. And so then I'm positioning my coaching as a solution to help them do that. Okay. I hope this is really helpful for you guys. I'm also going to do one more. Let's do my chameleon story. I know I talked a little bit about it yesterday, but I really think we didn't go through the entire caption, and the caption is really where this message converts because, like I said, this is my best piece of performing content. Um, and there's a reason why. And you'll see when I show you how the caption is set up. So, this is how the hook reads, in case you weren't here yesterday to hear it. So, 6 months ago, I took a high level personality profile test as part of a woman's entrepreneurial retreat. Let me let it scroll. When the results came back in, they were absolutely not what I was expecting and left me sobbing uncontrollably. My life has never been the same since. Okay. So you can see I used visuals here. Like I said, this was not just a random moment that I propped up my phone and fake cried. This was actually a moment of me experiencing this retreat and the deep emotions I felt behind knowing that there was a huge expansion happening inside of me and a huge transformation. And I just really wasn't sure of what that was, but I knew that it was absolutely life changing. So we're going to put a hook here again at the top of the caption. I wrote, I'll never forget it. 6 months ago, I flew across the country for an intensive 4-day entrepreneurial retreat. It was it was transformative in ways I never anticipated. I discovered more about who I am in those few days than I had in decades. But there was one moment that changed everything. We were taking high-level personality profile tests, and my results caught everyone off guard. The facilitator, an expert in these tests, paused when reviewing my profile. She said, "This is unusual. It must be a mistake." Wait, what? A mistake? I thought I'd answered the questions thoughtfully. I knew what every word meant. There was no mistake here. Then she said it. Your personality profile came back as a chameleon, a result so rare it's almost an anomaly. And typically, this means you have no idea who you really are. Ouch. Those words hurt. In the moment, I felt a rush of emotions: anger, confusion, frustration. Then clarity hit me. No, I know exactly who I am. I get dressed up for no reason. I live for vibrant colors like teal and mustard yellow. I am the Halloween obsessed mom. I wear hats 99% of the time and feel naked without one. Disneyland is my happy place. These quirks, they're not mistakes, they're me. I realize that the details we often dismiss as insignificant are the very things that make you unforgettable and that connect you with your audience on a human level. They create a magnetic personal brand that is uniquely you. And when I leaned into what made me different, I started sharing more of my story, the quirks, the passions, the little details that make me me. I stopped playing it safe and let my full personality shine in my content. I built a brand that feels like home, not just for me, but for the dream clients who need to feel deeply connected, who now feel deeply connected to me. And you know what happened? My brand became unmistakable. My content started converting effortlessly. The right clients gravitated towards me naturally. Because when you show up fully as you, you attract the people who you are meant to work with. Comment unique if you're ready to build a standout personal brand that effortlessly draws in your dream clients like a magnet every time you post. Okay. And on this one, I have tons of comments. Let's see if you can see them here. No, for some reason you can't. But I had people reaching out to me who said, like, this is a super hyper specific instance and scenario I'm getting. And in all the however thousands of people that saw this content, it has over like 200, I think 200,000 views this version does, and my other piece that is the exact same reel, hook, everything has over 300,000 views. There were people, not just one, but multiple people who came to me in the comments and said, I am a chameleon too. How amazing is that? First of all, as we know from my story, it's an anomaly and it's not a common character trait. But for someone to find my piece of content because it's landing and resonating exactly as it should, to say, I am a chameleon too. And I love that about me. Like that just creates instant connection and community with your audience. And it allows them to feel seen, to feel accepted, to know that maybe when they thought before how I did initially that it wasn't okay to be an anomaly, to be a chameleon, that it's actually the best thing you could do. And some of these people who reached out are also building personal brands online, and they want to know, how can I take the power of me and translate that into a brand online in order to build a successful business for myself? Because a lot of the times people don't realize that we are our greatest superpower. So, this piece of content is, like I said, my best and most highest converting in all ways possible. Um, and it's because it serves the purpose that I set out when I created that piece of content. I created that piece of content to create connection, for my audience to feel seen and to feel heard, to understand and shift their perspective and let them know that it is okay and absolutely amazing to be so uniquely you, to own that and to step into that fully in order to have a successful business or a happy life. So, I hope that sharing these examples were helpful. And I really hope that you will take all of these tools that you have gathered today and use them to go create a piece of storytelling content. I want you to have your little feelers on today and be like really aware of your moments and the things that are going on in your life. And I want you to craft a piece of content based off of an everyday moment. Share it, please, with the group. I want to hear it. I love stories. I love helping people connect these everyday moments and tie them back to their businesses so that they can help serve their audience in the best ways possible. So please, please, please make sure to create and share. And I can't wait to see what you guys come up with. We will be meeting again tomorrow, and we will have live question and answer session where you guys can bring content for feedback, post it in the Telegram group. I want you guys to be actively participating because I want you to get the most from this experience. So I had a wonderful time yet again with you today, and I hope you have an amazing afternoon. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you tomorrow.